We're going to go over the deadlift today. A lot of people think grip it and rip it. However, it's a very technical lift. Work on the technique, you can get a lot more weight off of the floor. So let's go over some of the pointers. First, foot stance. It varies per person, depending on your height and angles and leverages, etc. Generally speaking, you want to have kind of a shoulder width foot stance for conventional deadlifts. We're not talking about sumo deadlifts today. You want to basically have it to where your legs are kind of like in the stance that you would normally walk. You want to use the stance that you get the most leg drive from. That's key. The next thing is where to place your foot in relation to the bar. We always recommend about mid-foot. So if you're looking down, straight down, if you don't have a big gut and stuff, but if you look straight down, the bar should be mid-foot. When it comes to the deadlift, you want to be able to reduce the range of motion as much as possible. And so one of the ways that you can do that is not wearing a shoe while you deadlift. So ideally, you want to wear socks or maybe a deadlift slipper. That actually puts you in a better position. In training, I actually prefer Olympic lifting shoes. It actually raises the heel, and it kind of puts you in a deficit deadlift position. So it makes it a little bit harder. But that's just like a training modality that I like to use. Otherwise, if you're just going into a contest, say barefoot with a sock or a deadlift slipper. Bracing, you want to brace as hard as you possibly can. You basically want to like contract your abs. You want to bring your ribs down into your pelvis. You want to get everything tight. One time I heard someone say you want to squeeze your toes. You want to contract as much muscle tissue as you possibly can when you're doing the lift. If you wear a belt, you want to be able to push your abs into the belt. What that does, it increases your internal pressure. Your blood pressure will go through the fucking roof. Excuse my French. But it'll go through the roof. But by applying pressure into the belt, your torso becomes more rigid and you can actually transfer more energy into the barbell. Next is you want to think like long arms. So I don't particularly have like long arms. So in order to think long arms, I'll like stretch my arms down when I'm getting ready to do the deadlift. I just won't go in and like flex them up like this. That shortens the arm, but lengthens the range of motion. You want to shorten the range of motion. So you want to go in and think long arms. You want to extend those out, keep them nice and straight. Your arms should be parallel to one another and perpendicular to the floor. And what I mean by that is you don't want your arms out like this. So the further your arms go out, the longer the range of motion. So basically you get in, and as you can see, as the arms go out, your torso bends over a little bit more. You want to create long arms and have them parallel with one another, and the arms should be perpendicular to the bar. Go to lift the bar, your shins should come in contact with the barbell. The type of grip that you use, I actually recommend double overhand, especially if you're going to be using straps. If you do an over-under, which is very popular, especially in powerlifting, be mindful of not to try to curl the weight. You're not going to curl several hundred pounds like that. The underhand puts a lot of stress in the bicep, and I've seen a lot of injuries, torn biceps, by doing over-under. That doesn't mean you can't do it. Just be very, very careful with it and be very mindful of not trying to curl the weight. Your head position, I would say keep it neutral with your spine or slightly up. So when you're deadlifting, you never want to put your head down like that. You want to keep it in line with your spine or slightly up. Your body will follow where the head goes, so be mindful of that. If your head is down, you'll have a tendency to move forward and get off balance, and also leverage-wise, it's not good. Next, you want to pull the bar into the body, flexing the lats. And what I like to do is when I get ready to lift, I think long arms, like I said before, and I'll rotate my scapula down and back. And what that does is you physically are pushing or pulling the bar like up against the shins. The closer it is to the shins, the better, leverage-wise. If the bar is like out, like say if you're deadlifting and it's like past your toes, it's really bad leverage. There are some exercises that work well for that, but for the deadlift, no, you don't want to do that at all. Next is you want to get the slack out of the bar You want to get the slack out of the bar and the body. You want to be very rigid when you start the deadlift. You just don't want to like rip it and rip it like that. You don't want to do that. You want to come in, get tight, come down. I like to start with my hips sort of high, and what I'll do is I'll lean back like so. By leaning back a little bit, I'm thinking like it's like a teeter-totter. So as my hips, and these are my legs, and this is my head. So as my hips are kind of high, when I lean back, I raise up my shoulders, and that puts pressure onto the bar. Come in, big air, brace, like that. You hear that? That's what we call the slack in the bar. You want 15 to 20% of the weight that you're lifting in your hands prior to lifting or deadlifting the bar. This pointer is probably going to be the most important, and this is what really changed my deadlift from being like to better anyway, is don't think lift up, think push down with your legs. I kind of view it as like a leg press versus a deadlift. Once I get wedged in there, get the slack out of the bar, and I pull the bar in, I consciously think pushing into the floor versus lifting up. And so it kind of activates the quads a little bit harder than if you're just going to go in and just kind of pick it up from a dead stop. One thing to consider is that you want to lift it not slow. You want to think apply as much force as you possibly can into the bar. That creates speed, but you don't want to be, I'd say, like jerky with it. And what I mean by that is that you don't want to go in and start out loose and not get the slack out of the body or the bar, and you just go, you just kind of, the potential for injury skyrockets with that. If you can get like super tight and then brace in, wedge in between the bar and apply that pressure to the floor, and then just think like a press, like a hydraulic press or a pneumatic press, you push down, you do it smoothly, forcefully, but you think speed as well, but not where you're like jerking the bar off of the floor. Once the bar passes the knees, what you want to concentrate on is engaging those hips where they're pushing forward. So it's like you get it to here, and instead of thinking like lifting up, think hips forward, bam, and that will actually help lock the weight out. A couple other things is when you lock out the weight, pause briefly, because that creates a habit. If you go into a contest and if it's for max weight and you lift it up where you kind of boom, poof, you set it down, chances are they're not going to give you that rep or that attempt, I should say. Also, if you're doing it for reps, you don't want to be like popping it up in that. Like, you want to be able to pause briefly so there's no question in the judge's mind that you got that. Okay, I have taken away a lot of reps from people from kind of doing the bodybuilding style lockouts and stuff. So refrain from doing that. Lastly, and I believe probably the most neglected part of the deadlift, is the eccentric portion or the negative. I see this a lot where people will lift up and they'll either drop the bar or they'll just blam, let it slam into the floor. If you're training it, you're actually leaving a lot of volume off of the table that can actually be potentially good for building strength. So the negative portion doesn't get as much love because it sucks. Let's just say you lifted it up, you want to get done with it, you just want to drop it. My suggestion is once you lock it out, keep the tension on, bring it down under control. Doesn't necessarily have to be slow, but under control. Kind of bring it down, set it back down onto the floor. You'll actually, I think, in my opinion, will get more benefit out of the lift than if you just lift it and drop it. Here. All right. Truck. Leverage. Next is you want to have a car start and interrupt everything. It's a little bit longer range of motion. Let me start over again.